Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to discuss the poem Childhood, English, grade 11th, book Hornbill. Childhood is written by Marcus Nathan, who was a Norwegian poet. In this poem, the poet thinks about his lost childhood and turns nostalgic. He wonders about the moment when he lost the innocence and realized that the world is not what he seemed it to be. He recalls when his thoughts changed and he realized the hypocrisy of the people around him. He finally settled down to the idea that his childhood went to some forgotten place and is hidden in the face of an innocent infant. Now, let's check stanza-wise explanation. Stanza 1. When did my childhood go? Was it the day I ceased to be 11? Was it the time I realized that hell and heaven could not be found in geography and therefore could not be? Was that the day? In the above lines, the poet wonders when his childhood came to an end. He muses that perhaps it was the day when he was no longer 11 years old, or when he realized the concepts of heaven and hell. He realized they are imaginary places that do not exist in this world. Geography textbooks did not give the location of any such place. Education made the poet question his faith and look at the world much more rationally. The poet realizes that he might have lost his childhood when he gained this rational outlook. Stanza 2. When did my childhood go? Was it the time I realized that adults were not all they seemed to be? They talked of love and preached of love, but did not act so lovingly. Was that the day? In the second stanza, the poet wonders about the day when he started seeing the world with a new perception that adults are hypocrites and are not how they seemed to be. The poet recalls the time when he realized that the adults around him did not practice what they preached. They told the poet to be loving and caring, however, never behaved so lovingly. Stanza 3. When did my childhood go? Was it when I found my mind was really mine? To use whichever way I choose, producing thoughts that were not those of other people, but my own and mine alone. Was that the day? In the third stanza, the poet again repeats the same question about when did his childhood go. As he grew up, the poet realized that his mind was unique, could form its own opinions, and could take its own decisions. He gained a sense of individuality and a separate personality. His own experience shaped his thoughts now. He realized that this might have been the time he lost his childhood innocence completely. Stanza 4. Where did my childhood go? It went to some forgotten place that's hidden in an infant's face. That's all I know. So in the last stanza, the poet changes his question. The poet now wonders where his childhood went. He cherished his innocence, which has vanished now and could be only seen in a baby's face. He only has sweet memories of his childhood, which would soon fade away. He also conveyed a message that the innocence of childhood stays till the time one is an infant. Now, after the stanza-wise explanation, let's focus on the poetic devices used by the poet in the poem. The most important poetic device which comes out very clearly in the poem Childhood is refrain. The line, "When did my childhood go? Was that the day?" has been repeated thrice in the poem. The main idea, the central theme, the message that the poet wishes to convey comes out very clearly when these lines have been continuously repeated in the poem, and such a poetic device is known as refrain. The other poetic devices are antithesis, two contrasting ideas, hell and heaven. Alliteration, repetition of the same consonant in the line is alliteration, and the examples are there in front of you. Now, let's discuss the NCERT question answers. Question number 1. Identify the stanza that talks of each of the following: individuality, hypocrisy, and rationalism. Individuality comes out very clearly in the third stanza, wherein the poet says that the day he realizes that he has a mind of his own which can form opinion and produce its own thoughts, that is the day he realizes that he is not a child anymore. So the concept of individuality comes out beautifully in the third stanza. Rationalism. The day the poet understands that hell and heaven are not concepts to be found in a geography book. They are imaginary places. The poet develops a rational outlook. He becomes more logical and rational in his thoughts. So the first stanza beautifully depicts rationalism. Hypocrisy, second stanza, wherein the poet understands that the adults around him are not what they seemed to be. They talk and preach of love, but when it comes to themselves doing the same, they do not do so. So the concept of hypocrisy. Second question. What, according to the poem, is involved in the process of growing up? According to the poem, the loss of childhood is involved in the process of growing up. This loss is compensated by some gains which come with adolescence. There are increase in understanding, power of rationalizing, attaining maturity, becoming a rational and logical thinker, as well as a sense of individuality and self-confidence develops. When the poet becomes an adult, he was able to see the hypocrisy in other people. A mature person stresses on his thoughts and is capable of having his own opinion. Question number 3. What is the poet's feeling towards childhood? The poet is disappointed, nostalgic, but puzzled by the loss of his childhood. He wanted to know when was the moment he became a grown-up and lost the innocence of an infant. He expresses his confusion by asking that when and where did his childhood go? Question number 4. Which do you think are the most poetic lines and why? The lines in the last stanza are the most poetic in the poem. The lines are, "It went to some forgotten place that's hidden in an infant's face. That's all I know." The poet beautifully describes the disappearance of his childhood. He tells about how one can find innocence in an infant's face. It is a process of life that an individual grows up and slowly starts understanding the concept of the world and people around him. During childhood, a person believes in things that aren't real or has a different set of reality. When the child grows up and can process his thoughts, he realizes that many things don't exist the way he thought them to be. These lines are the most poetic lines also because only these lines have a rhyme scheme in the entire poem. Thank you.